The law was clear: no alien was to ever engage with a human. Not speak. Not touch. Not interfere. The elders called it containment. The younger ones called it fear. Kari never questioned it, not until the human fell from the sky. It began with a flash, streaking across Viral Prime's dusky heavens like a wounded star. A forbidden object, crashing beyond the outer ridges. Kari, a warrior in training and daughter of the Crescent Guard, was first to reach the wreckage. What she found wasn't a weapon. It was a man. Broken, half-burned, barely breathing. A human. Every part of her training screamed to leave him. Report it. Let the enforcers dispose of him. But he stirred, eyes fluttering open, blood on his lips, and he whispered, "Water, please." Not a threat. A plea. He looked at her like she was the last living thing he could believe in. She hesitated, then gave him her flask. A violation of everything she'd ever been taught. She couldn't leave him there. He'd die before the hour turned. So she dragged him, shoulders slung over her armor, through the jagged valley to a hidden spring she'd used as a child. No one would look there. No one ever came this far. She stayed with him the whole night. He was fevered, mumbling nonsense about ships and failure, names of people she didn't know, commanders, friends, maybe family. His wounds were deep. Not just physical. Something inside him had broken too. But he clung to life with a desperation she didn't understand. The next morning, she gathered herbs and dissolved them in the spring's waters. When she returned, he was sitting up barely, watching the sunrise with hollow eyes. "Didn't expect to wake up," he said. His voice cracked. She stayed silent, unsure if she'd done the right thing. "You saved me?" he asked. "You were dying. And you helped, even knowing what I am?" Kari nodded once. He smiled weakly. "That's very human of you." He said his name was Reese. A scout, assigned to a long-range recon vessel that never made it back. His ship was hit near the Forbidden Zone. He ejected, hoping for anything but this world. Kari visited daily, bringing food, bandages, silence. But silence didn't last. He talked, and she listened. His stories were different than the propaganda. He didn't talk about conquest or domination. He talked about losing friends and finding purpose. About a brother who never came home. A girl he once loved. A war they didn't win, but fought anyway. Kari asked him, once, why humans kept going when they knew they'd lose. "Because," he said, "quitting means letting someone else decide who you are." She didn't understand it then. Not fully. But something about the way he said it made her stomach twist. Weeks passed. He recovered slowly. The wounds faded, but the fire in his eyes returned. She caught him practicing movement drills, slow, deliberate, using stones and sticks as stand-ins for weapons. "You should rest," she warned. "I'm not resting," he replied. "I'm preparing." "For what?" "Don't know yet," he admitted. "But I'd rather be ready than helpless." Kari asked him why the elders feared humans. He didn't laugh. He just stared at her, serious. "Because humans don't stay in cages. Even when they're made of kindness." Still, she thought maybe she could keep him secret. Keep him safe. The universe didn't agree. One evening, she returned to find him standing perfectly still, eyes fixed toward the ridge. Another warrior had followed her. Patrol Commander Larek. Loyal. Brutal. And now, staring in disgust at the human she protected. "You've betrayed your blood," Larek spat. "You've let it speak. You've touched it." Reese stepped forward, weak but unflinching. "She saved a dying man. That's not betrayal. It is when the man is rot." Kari drew her blade, but not fast enough. The enforcers arrived within hours. The elders didn't delay. She was shackled and paraded through the spire halls, her name stripped from the warrior's scroll. They called her corrupted, tainted by human presence. But in truth, they were afraid. Not of the human's strength, but of what he'd stirred inside her. "You were loyal," one elder said, "until he looked at you like you were worth something. They sentenced her to exile. No trial. No farewell. Branded and stripped of armor, she was to be cast into the ashlands. Rhys, still weak, fought to follow her. They tried to hold him. He broke through. He stood in front of the elders, blood dripping from a reopened wound, and said, "She won't go alone. You die out there." Rhys looked Kari in the eyes and answered, "Then I'll die standing beside the only one here who acted like a person." He took her hand. She didn't let go. Not once. The elders watched in silence as the two of them walked into the wasteland, human and alien, traitor and outlaw, side by side. And though they didn't say it, every witness knew the same truth. The Reaper had awakened. And this time, he wasn't coming with weapons. He was coming with hope. They walked for 3 days across the ashlands, dry, dead terrain left poisoned by ancient wars. Kari kept Rhys steady when he stumbled. He never complained. She'd never seen anyone endure that kind of pain in silence, not even her own commanders. By the 4th night, Rhys built a fire from sulphurwood roots. Kari warned him the smoke would draw attention. He replied, "Good. If someone's watching, they should see what defiance looks like." In exile, she expected loneliness. But it never came. Rhys talked about things no one else dared to: love without permission, loyalty without command, dying for people who would never know your name. She began to understand what the elders feared. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't fast. He didn't threaten. And yet every word he spoke cracked something inside her, something she'd kept buried under layers of duty and silence. He asked about her world. About the history before the elders ruled. She didn't know. That history had been erased. She asked why he cared. Because when people forget what they were, they stop believing they can be more. One morning, they stumbled upon a broken watchtower from before the isolation era. Inside, survivors lived, outcasts, criminals, mutants. Kari reached for her blade. Rhys stepped forward unarmed. He spoke simply. Told them he wasn't a conqueror. Just a man trying to live free. They almost killed him, until one of the children stepped out and offered him a piece of dried root. Rhys knelt to thank her. That changed everything. Over the next days, others joined. Drifters. Former warriors like Kari, exiled for questioning orders. Some came just to see the human. He didn't give speeches. He asked questions. Do you remember who you were before you were afraid? Did you ever wonder why the elders fear truth more than weapons? And then the biggest one. Would you fight, not to rule, but to choose? They didn't answer right away. But they stayed. They listened. Then they began to build. Rhys helped reinforce the tower. Fixed tools. Dug water lines. His hands bled. No one had seen a leader bleed for the group. He refused special treatment. Kari caught him one night, alone, staring at the stars. "I thought humans wanted to conquer everything," she said. He shook his head. "Not everything. Just the right to choose how we live, and how we die." Rumors spread. Someone had seen him. Word carried across forgotten paths. That a human lived. That he was walking free. That he was gathering the broken. The elders called it infection. A patrol was sent to kill him quietly. But the outcasts fought back. Not because he ordered it, he didn't. They acted on their own. 4 patrolmen died. 1 was spared. Sent back with a message carved into his blade. "We remember." Kari asked Rhys what it meant. "We remember what they made us forget. That obedience isn't peace. That survival isn't life." He didn't celebrate the victory. He mourned the deaths. That night, he gathered everyone and told them they weren't soldiers yet. They were students. Learners. Rebels with no purpose would burn out. But if they built something, even small, it could spread. He taught tactics, not how to fight, but how to move unseen. How to disable without killing. How to sabotage systems without collapsing them. He trained them to survive, not destroy. They asked him why he didn't want to strike back harder. He said, "We don't become them. We show them something they forgot. One warrior, older than Kari, asked what gave him the right to lead. I'm not leading, Reese replied. I'm walking with you. If you want someone else at the front, I'll follow. That moment sealed it. They began calling themselves the Kindled Flame. Not a rebellion. Not yet. Just an idea. But one that burned hotter each day. Kari became his second, though she never called it that. She still thought of herself as a protector. But it was Reese who protected them all. Not with weapons, but with conviction. One by one, settlements sent whispers. Enforcers defected. Civilians asked for stories of the human who didn't raise a fist, but couldn't be moved. And then came the day an elder's son walked into their camp. Alone. No guards. No arrogance. He fell to one knee in front of Reese and said, My father rules through fear. I want to live without it. Tell me what to do. Reese didn't answer right away. He looked around at everyone and said, We don't take orders here. We take responsibility. The boy nodded. He stayed. He worked. He bled like the rest. Kari sat with Reese that night. She asked him what he saw happening. Nothing yet, he said. But soon? The elders will realize the worst thing they ever did wasn't underestimating us. It was letting us hope. And in that silence, they both understood something bigger than them had begun. It wasn't war. It was awakening. The elders tried to contain the whispers, but they had already lost control. Villages once loyal now asked questions. Patrols entered towns and found no one willing to speak. The silence was louder than rebellion. Fear no longer worked. The kindled flame had spread from a hidden tower to a dozen camps. Not by force. By choice. People arrived not for protection, but because they wanted to feel alive again. They didn't come to kill. They came to remember who they used to be. Reese never claimed to be a leader. He moved through the camps as one of them, working, building, teaching. The name, Grim Reaper, began as a joke, spoken by an elder during a broadcast meant to mock him. But the people embraced it. Not as a title of fear, but of change. They said he reaped lies. They said he didn't kill tyrants. He made them irrelevant. Kari asked if it bothered him. He shrugged. I didn't come here to be a name. I came because one person didn't let me die alone. He refused armor. Wore patched clothes. Spoke softly. But those who heard him walked away changed. The flame moved without central command. Each cell operated on the same principle. Ask questions, speak truth, defend choice. No orders were given. Only invitations. That's what made them impossible to stop. Elder High Command authorized a purge. Dozens of settlements were leveled in days. Still, the rebellion grew. Not in numbers, but in conviction. One settlement captured a commander. He expected torture. Instead, Reese met him personally. Offered him a meal. Asked one question. When did you stop thinking? The man broke in under an hour, not from pain, but because he couldn't answer. He joined them 2 days later. The elders couldn't comprehend it. They built empires on control. But control meant nothing to people who no longer feared losing what they'd already surrendered. Reese made no threats. But the very idea of him shattered discipline. Soldiers sent to capture him began deserting before reaching the border. He said one phrase that echoed across the movement. We're not here to win. We're here to remind them they can lose. Kari saw what he was becoming. Not a hero. Not a soldier. A symbol. And symbols were harder to kill than armies. But not everyone wanted peace. One breakaway faction struck an elder convoy, killing innocents. Reese called a gathering and condemned the act. Firm. Unflinching. We don't burn what we want to rebuild. Some left, angry he wouldn't endorse violence. He let them go. Never chased them. You can't force someone to be better, he told Kari. But you can show them it's possible. The turning point came quietly. A former elder scholar released forbidden archives, proof that the isolation law was built on fear, not fact. The council knew humanity was no threat. They feared what humans inspired: questions, resistance, hope. The revelation spread like fire. Even the silent began to speak. Kari led a mission to disable one of the Council's sky relays. They expected to fight. Instead, the guards laid down their weapons and opened the gates. Not a shot was fired. Reese walked through the halls and left behind a single phrase etched into the wall. "We are still here." Every elder fortress was now a question mark. Who still believed? Who would act? The regime responded with desperation. Propaganda turned rabid. Entire provinces were shut down. Families were imprisoned for merely speaking his name. But it was too late. The more they tightened their grip, the more slipped through. Reese's words had become currency. Passed between strangers like a secret handshake. Simple truths. Sharp enough to cut chains. This isn't rebellion. This is recovery. No one can take from you what you refuse to surrender. You don't need permission to be free. Kari noticed at first how quiet Reese had become. He moved slower. His breath short. The old wounds had never fully healed. But he said nothing. Just kept going. She confronted him. Demanded honesty. He smiled, tired. "I'm not afraid to die," he said. "But I want to leave behind something that doesn't need me to survive." She promised him it already existed. He nodded once. Then said, "Good. Because what comes next is going to test everything we've built." And he was right. The elders called for annihilation. Not discipline, not capture, elimination. The kindled flame had spread beyond control, and Reese had become something they feared more than war, an idea. They deployed full-force fleets toward the Ashlands, intending to crush every ember left. The rebels didn't flinch. They had no capital to defend, no throne to protect. Just people, bound by a choice. The flame gathered at the high ruins of the Sky Temples, a place forgotten by history and untouched by doctrine. Reese stood at the center, weakened but unshaken. His body failed him in ways he never admitted. Each step was a silent war. But when he spoke, his voice carried weight far beyond his frame. He told them not to fight for him. Not to fight for vengeance. But for the right to never be ruled by fear again. "They will come thinking we want to destroy them," he said. "Let's show them we came to free each other." Kari took command of the perimeter. Veterans trained by Reese moved like ghosts, quick, coordinated, deliberate. They didn't aim to win a war. They aimed to survive long enough for the truth to finish what they'd started. The first wave hit hard. Airstrikes, drones, shock troops. The rebels fell back, reformed, adapted. Not once did they break. Each defense wasn't just survival. It was a message: we're still here. They used what they had: improvised tech, repurposed gear, old knowledge revived. And still, they held. Reese didn't command the field. He couldn't. But his presence alone held the line. Whenever doubt crept in, soldiers looked at him and remembered why they'd chosen this path. Then came the breach. An elite division broke through the southern flank. Reese, unarmed, stood in their path. The enemy hesitated. It wasn't fear. It was confusion. The human didn't even raise his hands. He simply said, "You're not too late to choose." Some dropped their weapons. Others didn't. One fired. Kari reached him as he fell. Blood seeped through his shirt, the same side that had never fully healed. He smiled through the pain. "Didn't think I'd make it this far." She begged him to hold on. He just whispered, "Make it count." Reinforcements arrived. Not from the rebellion, but from across the territory. Civilians. Outcasts. Even former elders. All answering the call. They overwhelmed the remaining attackers not through superior force, but sheer will. The invaders retreated. Kari stood before the crowd, carrying Reese's body. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. She spoke clearly. They feared him. Not because he was human, but because he made us remember we had the power to say no. News spread within days. Across Viral Prime and beyond. Entire garrisons laid down arms. Tribunals crumbled. The Elder High Command dissolved, not with blood, but with silence. No one obeyed them anymore. What began with one human and one warrior became a tidal wave of awakening. Kari took no title. She refused leadership. Instead, she traveled, repeating Reese's words, helping others stand on their own feet. The last statue ever built on Vero Prime bore no face, no name. Just a phrase at its base. "We are still here." His grave was unmarked. His name passed by voice, not stone. Because Reese never wanted a legacy built on fear. He wanted a world where no one needed someone like him ever again. And that's exactly what he left behind.